All right. This is Melissa Ryan joining you in Reaca Pearl's office, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves here shortly. But I'm excited to have you join us because, as I mentioned in the title, we are talking about something that is difficult sometimes to talk about, consent and what that looks like in romantic relationships or in a sexual relationship. And it's super important because this topic has an impact on individuals, survivors of sexual trauma, and even just people in this culture at large. And it also has an impact on relationships. And so it's something I see in my office. It's something Reaca sees in their office. And so I'm going to have Reaca go ahead. They're the expert in this area, really introduce themselves, the work that they're doing, and how they support folks who come in where this is one of the things they're bringing into the office. So go ahead, Reaca. Thanks for joining me in your office.
Thank you for joining me in my office. So I work with survivors of sexual trauma and along the spectrum of what that means, childhood, adulthood, whatever. I also work with folks around life transitions, gender transitions. I'm poly-friendly, kink-friendly, trans, inclusive, the whole nine. So what comes up, I'm just going to jump right in, because I think that the title that we gave this is somewhat impactful.
Yes, this is impactful stuff.
And I really believe that if you can't, that yes has no meaning if you can't say no. And what happens in the counseling room when I say that to, for example, if we're dealing with a cis woman who is a survivor of sexual assault and is in a relationship with a cis man.
Okay. And what does cis mean for some folks who might not be familiar with that term?
Totally. So cisgender just means you identify with the sex you were assigned at birth. Your gender identity is the same as the sex you were assigned at birth. Okay. So, right? So you're not transgender if you're cis. Make sense?
Beautiful.
Okay. So cis woman in a relationship with a cis man and comes into my office to deal with trauma resolution, sexual trauma when they were a kid, for example. This is the people we're dealing with. And when I say yes has no meaning, when you cannot say no, that always provokes a really huge reaction because in my practice, at least, what I've noticed is that cis women and anybody who is assigned female at birth, generally, unless they've already done a lot of work and trauma work, they have not ever thought about what it means to genuinely say yes.
Yeah.
So if they're not actively saying no, like this is horrible and I don't want it and you're not my partner, then they don't even think about yes and no. Right? Does that make sense? So
what does that look like? And I see Danny's joining us. Hey, Danny.
Hi,
Thanks
Danny.
for joining us. So what you're saying is will you break that down a little bit more, like what that specifically means?
Yeah.
If they aren't actively saying yes, let's unpack that.
So a lot of times when folks are survivors of trauma, and like keep in mind too, as I'm doing this, I'm trying to give examples that we can work with instead of, speaking in
like real general terms?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So, but this can apply to anybody, even if you're not a survivor. We have a very limited set of ideals and set of messages that we receive, especially as AFABs, which means assigned female at birth, whether you're cis or trans, about what being sexual looks like, what it's like to be in your body. Like, we don't even talk about that. We're just like, you're in a relationship, and we have all these messages about you need to be having sex if you're in a relationship.
Yep, it's just part of what you do.
It's just part of what you do, and if you don't have it, because we have these messages, you can say this because you're a couples therapist. If you're having problems in your relationship, the problem is either money or sex.
Yes,
right.
Or sometimes how parenting stuff.
Right.
Yep, those are the top three. Yep.
So what does that mean for folks who are survivors? That is a really huge message that regardless of whether you like it or not, if you don't like it, there's a problem with you.
Yes.
And if you don't do it anyway, you are essentially your relationship is on the line.
Yes.
Right?
You are not doing what you need to do to take care of the relationship.
Exactly.
It's what is being communicated.
Yeah. So that's a really huge thing to say to somebody who, in a culture where we see bodies a lot, but we don't have open communication about sex.
No.
Right?
Or even really what's going on with the bodies.
Right, exactly. Oh my God, exactly.
We were talking about earlier. There's a bunch of things that you're like, oh, I didn't even know that the body did this, or this is a part of that process.
That some people have 3 holes. Like, can we say that? Yeah. Oh, low network connection. Sorry if we're not coming through. But do you see that?
It kicked me off. I don't know what that means. Yeah, connection available. Okay. Hopefully we're doing all right here. And then we don't just teeter out of there. But we're looking at the connection. Go ahead. So continue.
So this might be explicit. If you have littles in the room and you haven't talked to them about their body parts yet, you might want to let them be escorted out of the room.
Yes.
But yeah, so we don't talk a lot about what the body parts are. And even before that, like you were saying earlier when we were talking about this, about what are the consent, you were listening to something on some radio station about the stages of arousal or something?
Yes, and then like how, what that process looks like that's helpful for couples, like, or for folks engaging in a sexual experience, not even just whatever that could look like. When they're adults engaging in a healthy sexual experience, there's attraction, there was arousal, there's consent, and I forgot the fourth one.
Activity of some sort?
Maybe the action? Yeah, that's probably it.
So for a lot of survivors of sexual trauma and AFABs in general, which again is assigned female at birth, like you hear that, and for a lot of the folks that show up in my office, they dissociate, which means totally check out after attraction. Like that's where it ends for them, because everything else after that is obligation. It doesn't matter. And this doesn't mean that somebody doesn't have a sex drive. This doesn't mean that somebody is asexual. And by the way, we completely erase asexuals from this whole conversation, which isn't okay either, but that's a whole other Facebook Live.
That could be another topic, another day, another day. Important topic.
Yeah. So, but they totally dissociate after that, because it's like, I'm attracted to this person, I'm in love with this person, I'm in a relationship with this person. That means sex is mandatory.
Yes.
So the idea,
because that's what it takes to keep a
relationship
relationship going. That's what I gotta do to nurture it.
Yeah. So these folks that are sitting in my office wouldn't necessarily say, oh, my partner doesn't give a shit about whether I'm enjoying this or not. They would say, well, I can't think about what's happening in my body, because if I get triggered, if I'm not totally 100% there, if I'm not really enthusiastic about this, then I authentically won't want to do it. And my man, if I'm a cis woman and I'm in a man-woman relationship, my man needs his sex, or he's going to go somewhere else.
Or he might be upset, or he's going to guilt me, or he'll stomp away and pout, or all these things that people have shared with me. That's a part of could be a part of this dynamic.
Even if he's not intentionally doing that, like he legitimately is hurt. He has learned that his expression of love is done through sex. And she has learned, if we're dealing with a male-female relationship, that the way that she prevents her man from going outside of the relationship is to give sex, regardless of where she is.
Yes.
So she figures out a way to do it. So when I present this idea of, if you're not allowed to say no, not allowed to say no, meaning if you say no, your man will pout, or your partner will pout, or go outside of the relationship, or guilt you in some way,
or be angry,
or cry, or you'll feel responsible
or withdraw, emotionally withdraw.
So if you don't give sex, then you guys just don't connect at all intimately on an emotional level. They're like, these things will happen if I say no, so I'm saying yes.
Because it's not worth the cost.
Because it's not worth the cost.
Yes.
So in order to have an authentic sexual relationship, an authentically consensual, exciting,
potentially enthusiastic,
healing sexual relationship with your partner, you have got to go through the pain potentially, especially if you're a survivor, of figuring out how to get inside of your body.
Yes.
As an individual.
No longer dissociate.
No longer dissociate during sex to just get through it. No longer pretend you like it. No longer get drunk or get high or, whatever else
it
you
is
have
you
to
do. Yeah.
In order to enjoy sex. You have to feel what it is like to be in your body. And that means not just the good feelings. It also means the bad feelings. Because you have to be able to trust yourself and listen to your body. Mm-hmm. And that means if your body says, nope, for whatever reason, either it doesn't feel good, or I'm having a flashback, I'm triggered in some way, or I'm just totally disconnected, you have to be able to say in that moment, without risk of retribution in some way by your partner, that no, I'm not fully present, I'm not fully here, I'm not going to do this. And that is not a simple process. It's not just like, I want to do this, I'm going to do it tonight.
I'm already working on it. I've got this plan. I've written it out. That's right? I've got some clients that are like, mostly got a plan. I'm going to execute it. I'm like, well, I mean, it's great that you got a plan. Plans are good. We got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And this is the messy middle of life, right? Like this process, like you're saying, there's that saying, it gets worse before it gets better. I use the metaphor, which I don't know if you've used this, where like this happens to me, where I've like accidentally cut my leg somehow, didn't notice, I was doing whatever I was doing, and I'm like cleaning up blood, but I haven't looked down at my leg yet.
You haven't stitched up the hole?
Yeah. And so I look down and I'm like, oh no. Well, really, I say, oh shit, let's be honest. Oh shit, what have I done to myself? And it is that when I put that attention on it, I feel it.
Yeah.
Right? And so this kind of stuff, when we get people back in their bodies, and I do this in couples work, of let's get in your body, feel the sensations, because you got to first connect with what you're feeling to move beyond that and be able to express, this is what I need. This is what feels good to me. Oh, I see Susanna's joining us.
Hey!
Thanks for joining us, Susanna, and Margaret too. But yeah, you've got to get inside that body so you know what you need, right?
Yeah.
And that could feel not that great, right? It's like when I notice my gash in my leg, the minute I've got awareness, now I feel it.
And so you tune in, you feel that the cut is still there. You have two choices at this point. You can be like, oh, the cut's there. Okay, maybe I should wash it. Maybe I might want to go to the doctor, get it stitched up. Like, I can take care of it from that point forward.
Yes.
Or I can be like, that fucking hurts. And run the other way and not feel it. And then what happens to that cut?
It might get infected, could get some really negative side effects.
Mm-hmm. You probably are still putting blood all over the floor.
Yes.
Right.
And I'm still cleaning up the blood. So I'm paying attention to the symptoms of what's going on. But I'm not actually addressing what's really going on.
And the thing is still going on.
Yes.
Just because you ignore it doesn't mean it goes away.
No.
So one of the things that really freaks people out sometimes when they're doing sexual trauma resolution stuff with this sex relationship, and not everybody has to do this. That's the other thing. You have a choice. You can turn away from the gashing wound in your leg. You can keep doing what you're doing. And if that works for you and you want to keep doing that, you can. But if you want an authentic, healing sexual relationship with your partner, then you can't keep doing what you're doing because you're not in your body. So sometimes the pushback is around, well, yeah, I do really want to have this authentic and healing sexual relationship, but I have to still be having obligatory sex while I'm working on this stuff. And the thing is, guys, is that there are some therapists who will disagree with me on this. As a sexual trauma therapist and a sex therapist, I disagree back at them. That you cannot be having obligatory sex while you are trying to rewire your brain to think differently about sex. So if we have either a sexually traumatic past or just having all of the messages of what AFABs have in this culture. Which is traumatizing.
Yes.
Which means your body is not your own. You're responsible for how people see your body. You're responsible for what people do to your body, but you don't get to say yes or no. Then if you're still engaging in that, you're still following that pathway of, it doesn't matter how I feel about this, I have to do it anyway, which means I don't have agency or autonomy over my own body.
Yes.
And that can be even more triggering when you're dealing with folks who have body dysphoria, for whether that's survivors of eating disorders, whether that's folks who are trans, who haven't been able to come out or express their gender identity, those kinds of things. Anything around the body where you're already not in the body, that's layers and levels of where it's not safe. So pulling back, so the cis female that we started with, cis female coming into the session, and I say, you can't, yes has no meaning if you can't say no.
Yes.
And she says, okay, I do. I want to, get this authentic relationship, this authentic sexuality. I want to enjoy my sex life with my partner. I love him. Let's do it. And I say, okay, first and foremost, you have to disengage from all non-affirming physical situations.
Okay. So what does that mean?
That means, she says, I still have to have sex with him. If I don't, our relationship will end. That, without exception, every single one of my cis female clients who have male partners have said this. What that means is, if your partner, I mean, you obviously have to get your partner on board, right?
Yes.
You can't just be like, done, blah. You have to get your partner on board and tell him why this is important for you to do.
Yes.
Because you have to take a sex break.
Okay. So then
you have to take a sex break, is what I just said.
Yes. So how do you coach clients to be able to bring that up with their partner and explain to them everything you just said? So
sometimes, you guys, I will actually have the partner come into session. We will work.
It's doing a weird thing. Let's see.
Are we still on?
Yeah, I think we're on.
Right.
It's just, there's some weird connectivity. Who knows? Old building.
So sometimes I will tell, or sometimes the client, depending on the client's level of how hard they think that conversation is going to be, how much communication they already have in their relationship, if they have a couples therapist, sometimes we'll bring the partner in. We'll plan how to talk to and about this and what is important for the client to bring up, and we'll bring the client in, or I'll coach the client around how to have this conversation, which is starting with what you want, starting with the why. So, and this is a really hard conversation because for a lot of couples, they've never talked about this. The other person in the couple doesn't have any idea that their partner is dissociative during sex, doesn't have any idea that it's hard for them, would feel probably hurt, to know shame.
A lot of partners feel a lot of shame,
right? That their partner isn't as engaged as they are in the sex, that they haven't noticed that their partner isn't engaged.
So then they feel really bad about that because they're like, well, I want to be an attentive partner, I want to be an attentive lover, and I didn't even know they were disassociating. I didn't know
that they were triggered.
And something that I just want to put in there and then come back to what you said because I wanted to say it earlier was just that anyone that was raised assigned male at birth, in this culture, you can have two emotions if you're a dude: lust and anger.
Yeah.
Those are the acceptable emotions in our culture. And so that doesn't give room for the human experience, right? That's really, humans can experience, we have the capacity to experience so much emotionally. And if you've got two emotions to work with, it can be really difficult in terms of how you give and receive love.
Totally.
And so for a lot of the cis men I see, they give and receive love through sex.
Yep.
And so what we're talking about is so multi-layered. It's not just this act. It's like, well, this is how I've been giving and receiving love with my partner, and now you're telling me that they are not having that experience that would feel very loving.
Yeah. So that's why this conversation is so hard, because that's what my client in this situation, if we're doing that, that's what she is going to talk to him about. probably for the first time, and he probably has no idea.
No.
And now I'm not discounting relationships that aren't cis female and cis male. It happens in all sorts of relationships. This was an easy way to talk about the cultural context of how AMABs assign male at birth, cis folks, and AFABs, cis folks, assign female at birth. How we culturize. Culturize? Is that a word? I just made it up. How we culturize.
How people are inundated by the cultural norms or the cultural expectations or the cultural roles. Like, this shows up in all kinds of dynamics, though, right? And so that's the biggest challenge. Is it doesn't have to be a cis heterosexual person to be experiencing these same dynamics
and messages.
And messages. If you live in this culture, we are. What does Terry say? We are all fish swimming in a sea of patriarchy.
White, cis-normative, heteronormative patriarchy.
Yes. So there it is.
So at any rate, do you see how when we talk, though, we're like, la, 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 la. It's beautiful, isn't it? We're all over the place.
Yes.
I love it. So when we have that conversation with the partner, this is what I want for our relationship. The client saying this. This is what I want. I want a relationship where when we have sex, both of us know we want to be there. We have fun. Maybe we laugh. Maybe we're both totally present. It is comfortable and loving to say, oh, no, stop that.
Yeah, that's not working for me. Yeah.
It is comfortable and loving to be like, ooh, do this. I really want to feel this right now. Most people, even if you're watching it right now and you're like, ooh, I could never say that. We don't even talk.
We can't. The lights are off.
The lights are off.
No one sees anyone.
We just do it.
We just go right to it.
That was really graphic. It was. So, if that's what you want, the client is saying, this is what I want our sexual relationship to be. This is my vision. I want to be this connected to you. I want to be this authentic with you. Right now, because of my trauma history, because of the messaging, I'm not. And that's not because you're a bad lover.
Or a bad person.
Or a bad person. And it's not because you don't love me. I can bring this to you because I have trust in our relationship, because I know you love me, and this is safe to do this work. And I know it might be hard to potentially have a 6-month, a 6-month break from sex.
Or anything sexual.
Like you don't even touch, you don't even touch my butt or my arm without asking first, kind of stuff. Because in the meantime, I'm doing this really intense body work with my therapist. Even though that might hurt a lot, 6 months is a long time. It's because potentially on the other side of that is more authenticity and more healing and more connectedness
and more
health
intimacy.
And more intimacy than we've ever had before. And that's what I want for our relationship moving forward. So.
And more passion, potentially more passion, potentially more fun.
Yes.
That energy could really shift everyone's experience.
Totally. Because what happens a lot for survivors especially is once you get into a committed relationship, if you're in a monogamous, even a polyamorous relationship, the intimacy, the connection with that one person, starts feeling a lot like, even if you had a really vibrant sex life before, there's less risk. You're not as intimate with somebody you just met, right? So once you're in like a familial type relationship, you're married or you're committed or whatever, then it starts feeling like some of the interpersonal trauma that
is at play.
The family is not a safe thing for everybody, right? So what does that mean? How do I even show up in that sexual relationship? So, and then having that safety is essential for doing this type of work and being safe in saying no. And you need the partner buy-in, because then you set up something that works for both of the intimate partners, which is, it's not just 6 months and I'll see you then. We just exist and don't touch each other for 6 months. It's like, what does the partner, we ask the partner, what does the partner feel comfortable with check-in wise? Like, are you going to feel anxious if you don't hear something about the progress of the client, right? So we set up, okay, every Sunday, for example, You guys are going to sit down for an hour and you're going to talk about what client is doing in session that is working you guys towards the end of that 6 months. And what we also notice is that stuff comes up for the partner around that too.
Yes.
Is that right?
And and usually they need some support, right? Because they've received their own messages around sex and their body and what that means and how they relate to their partner. And it's not their partner's job to try and take what they're learning in therapy and apply it to their partner, right? That's just too much. That's just too much. They're doing their own healing process. They're doing their own work, and they're not biased. They're in the relationship. So the partner needs a supportive community, whether that's through group work, that's through, meeting, you found a Facebook group where you can get support, whatever. They need their own outlet, their own of course, we were going to say it. Yes. I mean, obviously their own therapist who understands what's going on. And really looking for therapists who are trained in looking at how trauma impacts relationships, looking at a therapist that understands relational dynamics. Every therapist has their own areas of specialty. So really finding somebody you feel comfortable with, that's number one.
Yep.
Right? Because you're going to be talking about something that's really personal. And talking about relationships is really hard for all of us.
Yeah.
I'm much more intimidated going in to see a couples therapist with my partner than I ever am to go see an individual therapist.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because that's like all sorts of blown over.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, you can't really see this, that I can be kind of an asshole sometimes.
Because I'm always perfect.
I'm so good in individual therapy. But when I bring my partner in, or I'm doing family therapy with my family members, then I can't hide that shit.
Yeah, because they're like, what? You're not perfect. Yeah, it's
I know
beautiful.
the truth about you.
So I do want to say that what research tells us, we know a lot about trauma and we know a lot about body, all of this stuff now, more than we ever have. And what research tells us is that we know stuff first in the body. We have this idea that in Western culture, especially Western white culture, all the normatives that we just went over, that we have to think things through and be logical and da da da. So a lot of us have totally disconnected from our body, even if we don't have specific event-based trauma. So we're constantly going to our head and intellectualizing. But what research tells us is that we know things first in the body. So our head might go, I'm hungry. And we think that that's our first thought, but that's not what happened. Nope. Our belly is going, and then
more communication comes forward.
Right? But that happens like this. So part of the work that once the partner is bought in, the client comes back and we start to get into the body, which can be really scary for a lot of people.
Because you're actually feeling what the body's been experiencing this whole time. Your body didn't leave you. You left your body.
Ooh, I like that. I'm stealing that.
Okay.
Your body didn't leave you. You left your body.
Yeah.
And so the process of that, one of the reasons it takes 6 months or more is because the process of that is like elongating the space so that you're aware in between, not in your throat necessarily, but in between your brain and your body, so that you become aware of when you're describing, that's description of a sensation, versus interpreting, which is, I'm hungry, right? It might be that you're hungry, but that's not the point. It's not that interpretation is bad. It's that we want to slow it down so that there's a whole bunch of space here and you're like, okay, my belly's going, and then that's it. For a while.
Just connecting with the sensation.
Just connecting with the sensation.
And not interpreting it. Because then you're ditching your body again. Yes.
We make a good team.
This is good. I know. Susanna said we should start a podcast.
Oh my God!
Thanks, Susanna. We love your support. She was like, it's so good.
Yay!
She said she'd subscribe. What else did it say here? Stuff's so important. And she had to go, but she enjoyed it.
So we're talking to her. She's not even
there. But yeah, I mean this. So I guess.
Well, and I want to say just really quick, in case people are like, I'm triggered right now, I don't want to go in my body. That's the thing, is that you're not coming into my office and being like, I have sexual trauma and I want to be a healing sex life, and I'm like, all right, you're in your body. Like,
let's dive in.
No, it's a titration experience where it's really like, okay, is there any safe place in your body?
Like maybe your fingers.
Yeah, because for a lot of people, there's nothing.
Nope.
So we find other ways of grounding somewhere else outside of your body and get closer and closer and closer, because it doesn't serve anybody for you to be flooded with emotion and overwhelmed. You're not going to get anywhere that way. You're just going to be re-triggered. So we take it at your pace.
Which is also comes to a question I get asked a lot, like, how long is this process going to take? And there's not a great answer for that ever, because everybody's comfort level is different and their experience of the process is different. And like Reaca says, it doesn't serve anyone. And this is, I talk with my couples about this. It doesn't serve anyone to just put stuff out on the table to kind of force it out. Because it's re-traumatizing, it doesn't create safety in the counseling, therapeutic relationship. And so one of our jobs, I believe, is to really be conscientious of pacing and really checking in, like pushing a little, because if you're not a little bit uncomfortable, no change is really taking place.
And the pushing, I think, the little bit uncomfortable, you have to be able to tolerate feeling the discomfort.
Yes.
So it doesn't help if you're like, here's my whole story and it's all traumatizing and I was totally dissociated the whole time.
Yeah.
That you're not getting anything out of that. No. I mean, you might have told me the story, but you didn't.
Your body isn't healing. It's not working through it.
So you have to be able to be present while you're feeling that. And that's not always an easy process.
No.
And that's what a therapist is for, to like pull you back to being present.
Yes, pull you back in your space, back in your body, and to pace it and to continue to check in. And so,
and I can tell one more thing. Oh my God, I know we're probably over time.
Okay. I was going to say we're going to be wrapping up. But that's all right.
I know. I saw it in your face. So the one thing that I want to say about the 6 months, because that's just something I throw out there because people need to know that it could take a really long time.
Yes.
And it might not take that long. And also, some people will be like, well, can I do it without, because I am not going to commit to not having sex. And for some survivors, not having sex for 6 months, they're like, yes. And for some, they're like, no way, dude. I actually enjoy sex. Like, whether it's totally embodied or authentic doesn't matter. I like it and I don't want to give it up. And that's fine. I will say what, parenting experts told me about the whole potty training thing. Yeah, I'm bringing it in. If you start potty training, I do have kids. If you start potty training your kid before the kid is ready and open to that idea, it's still going to take as long. You're just both going to hate each other by the end. Similarly, like if you continue to do the activity that is a traumatizing activity on whatever level, it's probably just going to take longer. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not one size fits all. Like, you don't have to totally abstain in order to do this work. It will probably make it quicker because you're totally safe within the
really
body.
Working to connect with your body
And working to
and figure out what feels good. So that was a good tidbit.
Oh, yeah.
So our question that we're going to ask the audience for you to mull over, if you would like to share, please share. It's just really thinking about what feels good in your body. So sharing, it could be you like baths, going for a walk, you like a certain lotion, but I want you to reflect, if you're open to it, share it on this page.
A certain smell.
Smell. Yeah. One of those mermaid pillows. I really want one of those. You know what I'm talking about?
Where you go up and down.
And maybe it's kinetic sand, whatever it is that you just are like, yeah, that feels really good. And that's part of the work that Reaca does with clients, is really helping them identify what is it that feels good to me. Because in order to be able to authentically bring to your partner what you need, you first got to tap into what that is and what feels good.
You gotta know.
You got to know. And then you can ask. So I will include Reaca's information in this talk. And we ask you to share, especially other practitioners. This stuff is hard a lot of times for people to bring up. So you sharing it on your own page just helps to decrease that stigma, to make it clear to people that this is stuff that lots of people bring in, that it's a lot of, it impacts a lot of folks, and that they can really get help and relief and And we want that for them.
Yeah, and that you as a clinician are open to talking about this.
Exactly. That's a huge piece.
Puce.
I don't even know what that word is.
A puce?
I think
is
it's
that
is that pumice?
pumice.
You're thinking of pumice, but that's all right. But
I don't know the way pumice feels.
We just really want people talking about these things because at least in my work, this comes in the door quite a bit. And that intimacy piece is a big part of what maybe it might be missing, or there's a disconnect there, or they want to enhance that. And a big part of that is that people are able to show up in an authentic, present way where consent is real. That you really, to be able to say enthusiastically yes, you got to also be able to say no with no repercussions.
Totally.
So, high five. Reaca is rocking it. If you would like to come see them, like I said, I will leave their information in the comments. They're awesome, obviously. We're a great team, as Susanna already mentioned. And maybe, we should do another one. Not that we should on each other, but...
We're not doing masturbation here.
No.
We should do another one. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about.
We've got lots to say. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your day.